That's why I'm here. It's ethically and morally wrong. A blind man can see this is fraud on the grandest of scales.
The system's rigged against the patient.
It's really not insurance, is it?
Well, all this is money.
They're robbing all the consumers.
I would call it profiteering and greed. They don't want you telling the truth.
Correct.
You think it comes down to money?
Absolutely. No, all this is money. This has nothing to do with consumer health or anything else. It has everything to do about money.
They're taking advantage of people, and worse yet, they're taking advantage of elderly people and people who are sick. They're taking advantage of the most vulnerable people. It's ridiculous. Is it just about a money grab now in healthcare?
Hammond, Louisiana is stuck between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, 45 minutes in each direction from the state's two most populated cities. Hammond has a connection to our nation's capital, a significant connection between two cities 1,100 miles apart, a connection you don't know about until now. It will allow millions of Americans like you to save money when buying prescription medication. Here's why. In October, President Trump signed a bill that will lower health care costs. That bill received bipartisan support. You don't hear that much lately in Washington, D.C. The bill a result of a series of interviews done by a Louisiana pharmacist.
It's fraud, in my opinion.
Honest but afraid of the consequences of his identity being uncovered.
Most people think having insurance reduces their prices. That's why you buy insurance.
Correct.
But that's not happening in some cases.
That's absolutely correct.
The pharmacist, a whistleblower who provided us with information that changed federal law. That pharmacist from Hammond, Louisiana. Tonight, for the first time, you'll meet him, see his face, hear his real voice. But first, the stories that got us here. Millions of Americans being charged a secret premium. Healthcare providers overcharging for prescription medication, costing you hard-earned money. A scheme we labeled a U-Pay. When you go to the pharmacy, your insurance plan typically has a rather simple payment structure. Your insurer picks up some of the cost, you cover the rest. What's called a copay. That Hammond pharmacist gave us a stack of documents, dozens of prescriptions his pharmacy filled. Here's one for an anxiety drug. The pharmacist received $2.61 from the pharmacy benefit manager, or PBM. The customer paid $15. It's even labeled a copay. The PBM then told the pharmacist to send the leftover money back to them, $12.39. So the PBM and insurance company didn't contribute anything to the purchase. That copay became a U-Pay, and the PBM essentially charged the customer a hidden, secret premium.
They don't want you telling the truth.
Correct.
Why?
Because people would be outraged if they knew that they were actually paying an extra premium every time they had a prescription fill.
Pharmacists had gag clauses with insurance companies and PBMs. It prevented them from helping their customers save money. Early on in our investigation, we brought our findings to U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, who's also a doctor.
The patient is subsidizing the entity which is supposed to be their advocate.
Cassidy took our findings to Congress and in September passed a bill the president signed that prevents those gag clauses. Pharmacists can now tell customers when a cheaper price exists. Cassidy says this bill resulted from our investigation.
And it all began with a pharmacist talking to you and talking to me, and then you speaking with me, and that representative government working.
It all began with this pharmacist.
There he is. How are you?
Good seeing you.
Good to see you. You doing all right?
Doing fine, thank you.
What do you think about your face being shown on TV, huh?
A little scary. A little scary.
Scary, but now unafraid of any consequences.
What made you make the decision, you know what, I can show my face now?
Well, the thing is, because now we got that gag clause lifted, we can get other pharmacists who've been talking and fighting for the people in the United States for years, that finally we can actually freely talk about it. So when the patient comes to that counter and talks to the pharmacist, we're no longer worried about getting pulled out of network or somebody suing us and this kind of stuff.
This is Ricky Menino, a longtime pharmacist of an independent pharmacy in Hammond, Louisiana.
Do you realize what you've done?
I haven't done anything.
He's modest, but it's a fact. The owner of this pharmacy helped change a federal law, help Democrats and Republicans come together.
From a pharmacist's point of view across the country, how big a deal is this?
It's incredibly huge. It's incredibly huge that finally someone like yourself has taken this issue and put it out on a stage that no one can ignore.
This will save money.
This will save lives too.
He's humble, but this pharmacist from Hammond, Louisiana, will save Americans money. He helped change a federal law exposing millions of dollars of medical waste.
But now we've got one coming through right now, just going past a police officer. This is not a pickup truck. And look at the tail end of that vehicle start to float almost immediately. The police officer is now yelling at the person inside the vehicle, but I think there was a plan to put up barricades at these intersections. And now this officer is about to have to get wet again as a car went right around behind him and is now floating sideways. Needless to say, if you're in the area of the Carrollton underpass, do not go past any police officers and try and negotiate this underpass, because several people can get hurt. And now you can see the officer pulling this person out of the vehicle, and it looks like the vehicle is trying to come with him as well. This could be an elderly person. We are not sure. But New Orleans police on the scene, now getting this person out. Aggravated 1 minute, forced to be a rescuer the next. And here we go. New Orleans police on the spot, conducting a rescue at the Carrollton underpass. Forget about the car. Make sure the people inside are safe. And that's exactly what's happening here. It looks like that could be an elderly person. I am not sure. And we are going to go over and try and talk to these people. We've got two police officers over here blocking traffic on Carrollton Avenue. Somehow this does look like an elderly lady managed to get through, and New Orleans police have now rescued her, and she's apparently safe. We're going to try and talk to her. Ma'am, are you okay?
Okay, a man helped me.
Did you not see the police officer there trying to block the road?
I did not.
We've been out here for probably about 20 minutes, half an hour, and the rain is coming down more now than it was when we first arrived. Unfortunately, showing no signs of stopping, with lots of thunder and lightning. Here's another car coming through here, obviously going a lot slower, but you can see the water going into that building, and you can imagine when it's a bigger truck just how much water is pushed into that building.
For about 30 minutes, my buddy Mitch and I were parasailing my tent as the wind came off the bayou and wiped out the first line of tents, which blew most of them into the second line of tents. But the guys on the inside are a little bit more spared.
Well, we see merchandise all over the place here, and probably a lot of money worth.
I predict most of these people are going to have to take these hits personally.
We just did this. It was last August. We flooded. There's a water line on our wall where it came in. So, but whenever we have a hard rain, this happens, and people don't want to slow down.
And I'm actually looking at your newscast right now, watching this officer walk through that water. And this is what we're here to do. But we don't want to do that if we don't have to. If everybody would just be cautious, not to take those chances and drive through the water, because you never know how deep it is, and then it prompts us to have to do a rescue mission.
This officer, Chief, should be, I mean, look at what he did going in there in the water and then pulling this woman out of the car and carrying her back to safety. He definitely should be commended for his work today, though.
Absolutely. I'm watching it right now on your channel right now. It's very heroic. I'm extremely proud.
I was holding on to the vehicle so the vehicle wouldn't move, but it still was moving, but I was able to grab her and pull her out. Her leg got caught into the steering wheel, but we made it out.
Are you trained for this?
No, because I do not know how to swim.
Tonight in a television exclusive, allegations of church sex abuse at Jesuit High School.
Yeah, you'll hear from a man who says he was raped on the school's campus, then given nearly a $500,000 settlement to keep quiet. Kimberly Kerr traveled to Texas to sit down with the alleged victim.
Richard Winman says he was only 12 years old when it started. He lived near Jesuit High School at the time, where he and other neighborhood children loved playing on the school's basketball court. Winman wasn't a Jesuit student, but he says Pete Modica, a janitor at the school, would bring him on campus often. That's where he says Modica raped him.
It started out with oral sex, just Pete Modica. And it graduated to sodomy. I was sodomized. One time it was in a chapel at Jesuit High School, and one of the teachers came in and discovered me and Pete Modica when he was performing oral sex on me. And I thought it was over. I thought a responsible adult had discovered us. And he yelled, he said, "Pete, God damn it," is what he said. But he never said anything.
In a separate incident, Winman says priest and theology teacher Cornelius Neal Carr also walked in on the sexual abuse.
Later on, when it graduated to sodomy, Father Cornelius Carr came into Pete's office and discovered us. And I thought, wow, the priest knows now it's going to end. And he took his hand and put it on my back and said, "Relax." And then he masturbated while Pete was sodomizing me.
Fox 8 typically doesn't identify sexual assault victims, and at the time of this interview, we chose not to identify Winman. But he has agreed to allow us to report his name and show his face. We've also obtained what appears to be a draft settlement agreement faxed to Jesuit High School in November 2012. It lays out a confidential settlement between Winman and Jesuit High regarding the alleged sexual abuse, where Winman would be paid $450,000.
Attorney Roger Stetter has litigated nearly 80 cases against the Archdiocese of New Orleans. Last week, Stetter landed a $500,000 settlement from the Archdiocese for a man who said teacher and deacon George Brignac raped and sexually abused him at Holy Rosary Church, a man Fox 8 is not identifying.
I was an altar boy, and the church, in their infinite wisdom, decided to make him head of the altar boys.
The victim says Brignac raped and abused him at church, in his car, and at his home across the street from the church.
He raped me many different occasions, in different places. As a child, I felt guilty, I felt scared, I felt intimidated, and I didn't express to anybody what was going on.
After the Archdiocese of New Orleans paid out a $500,000 abuse settlement this month, George Brignac maintains he's done nothing wrong. Rob Masson has the exclusive story.
Mr. Brignac? A former altar boy accused George Brignac of raping him when the boy was just 8 years old. Now the former deacon and teacher answers our questions about the Archdiocese's settlement with the victim. Do you think the church should have paid that out?
I can't say that for the Archbishop. I'm not in his mind.
Do you make any apologies to the boys who claim you abused them, sir?
I've always been apologetic to anything I did wrong, if I did anything wrong.
What we look for are credible allegations. And what we're dealing with now with Mr. Brignac is a credible allegation.
Did you molest any boys, sir?
No.
The Archdiocese of New Orleans identified 57 people.
Yeah, we got in touch with 2 on the list to get their reaction. As Amanda Roberts reports, one former priest says he regrets his actions.
Of the 57 clergy members identified on the Archbishop's list, 14 are still living. When reached for comment, Lawrence Hecker couldn't be reached, neither could James Kilgore, Gerald Prince, or Patrick Sanders. But when reached at his home, John Sachs admitted to being one of the 57 on the list.
The list is out there. I have nothing to say about it. My name's on it. I have nothing to say.
Do you apologize to any
I've already done that 17 years ago. I apologized then. I apologize now. I'm sorry. I regret what I did. The name is correct. It's on the list. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. I'm sorry and I regret it.
Do you hope for anything?
Sorry and I regret it.
Do you hope for anything in the future?
Forgiveness.
Morris Daniels says defrocked deacon George Brignac raped him repeatedly, and the church knew about it.
As a 7th grader at Holy Rosary in the 1980s, Morris Daniels says he had dreams to become a Catholic priest, but instead lived the worst year of his life.
It is painful. It's humiliating.
Daniel says he was bullied at school when Deacon George Brignac stepped in and stopped it.
He befriended me and bought me things, and we got really close.
Daniel says the friendship came at a price. The lawsuit outlines how Brignac started to sexually abuse Daniels in the boys' bathroom at Holy Rosary. It then escalated to sodomy when Brignac would drive him off campus in his car.
He told me he loved me. He told me I was special. He told me this was our secret.
Daniel says he thought he buried those memories until he recognized one of his friends recounting his story of abuse in a news report.
I didn't know that he was being raped also. These memories came flooding back.
These are arrest photos of 2 state troopers booked in a Baton Rouge prison this afternoon for theft and falsifying records.
Yeah, the troopers are out of jail tonight, but face serious charges that resulted from our months-long state of unrest investigation. Daryl Thomas earned more money than any other law enforcer in the state. Each of the last 2 years, he made $240,000. Thomas is charged with illegally earning some of that money. The East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney charged him with 2 counts of filing false public records and 1 count of felony theft greater than $15,000. Our investigation followed Thomas for 12 different workdays. What we found, for all 12 days, Thomas claimed hours on his timesheet he didn't work.
You don't have to take a class in criminal law to know that you can't submit fraudulent timesheets.
For example, September 4th of last year, Labor Day, Thomas billed taxpayers for 16 hours. The first 6 hours he worked a ticket writing overtime shift in St. Charles Parish. Then from noon to 10 p.m., his timesheet shows he worked his regular state police shift. But our undercover camera caught Thomas at home from 11:10 until 5 p.m. Almost 6 hours of that workday, Thomas didn't work.
It's disgraceful, it's shocking, it's unacceptable.
We also had our surveillance unit on State Trooper Byron Sims. For 5 different Fridays, we found Sims arriving home well before his LACE ticket writing shift ended. LACE is short for Local Agency Compensated Enforcement Detail. Local parish governments contract with state police to have troopers write tickets on highways in that parish. On August 4th, Sims worked a LACE shift in St. John Parish until 6 p.m. We spotted his car arriving home around 1:30. Another example, August 18th, his St. Charles Parish LACE detail ended at 6 p.m., but we found his car at his Orleans Parish home at 12:55. Sims is charged with 4 counts of filing a false public record and 1 count of felony theft greater than $21,000. Sims and Thomas could face up to 10 years behind bars for the theft charges, up to 5 years for the false public records charges.
This is an extremely disappointing and sad day for the men and women of the Louisiana State Police. As I've said before, we must hold ourselves accountable for our actions before we can hold the public accountable for their actions.
State police spent almost 6 months investigating these troopers. They subpoenaed our undercover video, analyzed cell phone records, tickets, and timesheets, and today concluded 4 broke the law. illegally receiving taxpayer money. According to the district attorney, police responsible for enforcing the law broke the law themselves.
We're tracking some breaking news into the alert center now of a massive fire happening right now in Mid-City. Take a look at this live video we have coming in from our crew in the scene. Look at that fire. I mean, the flames are just out of control. Firefighters on the scene.
More now on our breaking news out of Mid-City.
A massive fire has broken out along Bayou St. John near South Jeff Davis Parkway. Rob Krieger is there live.
Yeah, that's right. The flames continue to devour the building on the opposite side here of Bayou St. John. Just take a look behind me as the New Orleans Fire Department continues to douse those massive flames with hoses from at least 2 ladder trucks now and what is at least a 2-alarm fire.
You're waking up to news this morning of this very large fire that has been burning now for about an hour or so along Bayou St. John.
Just a few moments ago, right here on the east bank of Bayou St. John, the owner of Canal Furniture Liquidators collapsed in tears as she watched what she said is her life work just burn up.
This is a pretty dramatic fire that we haven't seen the likes of for several years.
It has actually been quite some time. There's been 2 ladder trucks out there that have aimed this continuous spray of water.
We've got team coverage right now. Alan Henry is live just on the other side of the fire with another look. Alan?
Hey, Rob, that's right. You know, something is definitely fueling the fire here this morning, just based on what we're seeing. You know, like Rob was saying, the flames are starting to die down a little bit, but when they start to die down, you can see they start to shoot right back up.
It's a big warehouse, a 2-story warehouse. It's a heavy load of furniture. It's a furniture business, and very unfortunate. And we feel for people in our community when that happens. It's an economic loss to both, obviously, the owners and then the community when you lose businesses like this.
No one was injured in the fire. You see crews are still putting out some hot spots within the building. We're told by Fire Chief Tim McConnell that the crews will remain here overnight, securing the scene for fire investigators and the ATF to start their investigation to find out what caused this fire here at the warehouse.
Our series on 4 local judges launched an investigation by the State Judiciary Commission. We discovered these judges improperly and potentially illegally receiving tens of thousands of dollars a year in public money, at the same time overcharging couples, tying the knot. Tonight, we take a look back at Misjudged.
I kind of laughed and I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
When why not turned to I do, Michelle English opted for convenience.
We were just talking one day and I said, pick a date. We'll go to the courthouse.
Michelle and Lyle drove a few minutes away from their West Bank home to New Orleans' Second City Court, the Algiers courthouse. The secretary told them the judge charged $100 and they must bring cash.
I thought it was a little expensive.
Their 1 o'clock wedding started 90 minutes late after the judge returned from lunch.
How long was the ceremony?
It wasn't that long at all. I mean, really.
5-10 minutes?
Maybe. Maybe.
But what they're learning from our investigation has them feeling ripped off.
That's not cool at all.
And a Tulane law professor outraged.
This is shocking.
4 New Orleans judges perform weddings in their courthouse.
Hey, how much does it cost to get married by your judge?
In First City Court next door to City Hall, judges Angelique Reed, Veronica Henry, and Monique Morial charge $80 to officiate a wedding in the courthouse during the workday.
You said $100 for a ceremony?
On the West Bank at the Algiers courthouse, Judge Tina Anderson Trahan charges $100. And according to financial disclosure forms all 4 judges filed with the state Supreme Court, they keep that money as additional compensation, between $5,000 and $25,000 a year.
They're not supposed to get salary supplements for doing this on the side. I mean, you know, they're not judges for hire. This is not Judge Judy.
Tulane law professor Joel Friedman says no part of the law allows the judges to pocket this money.
This money should be staying with the court.
Absolutely.
According to financial disclosure forms, this has been happening for at least a decade. Judges being paid as much as $25,000 more than the law allows.
This is part of their job. They're doing it during the workday at their workplace.
The 4 judges declined our request for an on-camera interview. They tell us they have no record of how many weddings they officiate a year. But there's more. A section of state law does address weddings in First and Second City Court. It says for every marriage in the courthouse during office hours,
there shall be a charge of $5.
Wow.
Really? $5.
$5. Damn, we got shafted.
Yeah.
Anderson Trahan claimed to make between $5,000 and $25,000 officiating weddings. Again, she charged $100 a wedding, and last year officiated $473, netting as much as $47,000. In 6 years, Judge Anderson Trahan could have collected as much as $219,000 in cash. Following our series of stories, a state senator called for the Judiciary Commission to investigate.
It is the law of the land, and every citizen is obligated to follow the law.
But we wanted more clarity on the weddings officiated by Judge Anderson Trahan. That's how we met Ricky Jenkins. Since he no longer lives in New Orleans, Jenkins found out about our stories when he received our letter. We sent one to every person married by Judge Anderson Trahan in 2017, asking them how much she charged. Respondent after respondent told us the judge charged them $100, sometimes even higher. All totaled, we reached 280 people married in 2017, and all told us Judge Anderson Trahan charged them $100 or more.
When you get 200 responses and every single one of them tells you the same story, they didn't all get together at a party somewhere and say, let's tell Lee Zurk a lie.
Right now, this is what we're looking at, zooming into the metro area just one more time so folks in New Orleans know what's coming.
Tornado watch still in effect through 7 o'clock, but as you can see, we're seeing it kind of peeling away from the Baton Rouge area. So in the next hour and a half to 2 hours, the worst of it will be moving east of us.
This camper that you're looking at, this is where the men who milk the cows, well, it's where they used to live. Luckily, around 3:30 this morning, they were out of the camper milking the cows when the tornado blew through and devoured their homes. But this sign that you see, well, it used to be on a barn way over there, several hundred feet away.
When we walked outside and looked around, it was the god-awfulest thing we've ever seen.
I'm going to step out of the way so you can see the damage that is still here. And there's a couple of guys in there right now rummaging through what they can salvage. And one of those guys you see there is G.W. King. I spoke with him a little bit ago. He's a minister here. The trailer homes in this camp are all run by a minister, a family of ministers, and they basically welcome in people who are in need, alcoholics, drug addicts, and the homeless. There were 2 men inside of that home when it did flip over earlier this morning. And GW says they've been trying to get in touch with them at the hospital, and hopefully they're okay. We also spoke with Stanley Green. He was here whenever that tornado touched down and came through this area.
They're okay. It turned over on them. Leonard Rochelle, he's like 81, and the minister's brother James Wilbanks, and they said that they both walked out and he's bleeding. I think Mr. Leonard has a broke arm.
While some tornadoes have already been confirmed, it could take days for investigators to get a clear understanding of the severity of today's tornado outbreak.
Some of the worst damage can be found on the North Shore, where structures have been torn apart.
Rob Masson joins us and shows us some of the damage in Washington Parish.
It was a morning the Lott family will never forget.
Well, I was running behind him, and he was saying, oh my God, what is going on?
They heard their phone alarms go off, then 3 minutes later, a sound unlike any other.
It sounded like it was hailing. Things were hitting the house. And then all of a sudden I started hearing breaking glass.
Robbie and Rita Lott rushed to the living room where their 9-year-old son Will was sleeping. They got on top of him as the roof over his head blew away.
He fell asleep on the sofa. A lot of times he does that, and we'll just leave him there. And, when I heard everybody says it sounds like a freight train, and that's exactly, maybe 100 freight trains, but, that woke me up, and I just ran in there and dove on top of him.
Fox 8 takes a closer look at low bonds in New Orleans, bonds that some say put potentially dangerous people back on the street.
Natasha Rodman explores the city initiative behind the low bonds.
When a burglar fell through the roof of an occupied Airbnb and escaped, NOPD officers took it very seriously. Police say DNA from a random lighter found on the scene pointed them to 50-year-old Karsten Oliver. When police found him, Oliver started running. They chased him over a fence and eventually under a house where they had to talk him into coming out. He ended up here in magistrate court. Despite having 4 prior felony and 5 misdemeanor convictions, Commissioner Albert Thibodeau gave Oliver a $100 bond.
I think that public safety is being ignored.
The Orleans DA's office immediately stepped in to increase Oliver's bond, but it was too late. He was already out. Magistrate Judge Harry Cantrell issued a warrant for his arrest and raised the bond to $2,500. Low bonds or no bonds at all are becoming common in magistrate court, even when the defendant is accused of a serious crime. An aggravated assault suspect, his bond, $1. A home invasion arrest, the bond, $150. Distribution of cocaine suspect, a $250 bond.
Bail is being set at levels that are less than what it costs to pay for a speeding ticket.
The city, though, is behind the initiative. Its ultimate goal? Reduce the jail population. Low bonds are allowing suspected criminals to bond out in a matter of days. And in some cases, a third party, known as the Freedom Fund, picks up the tab.
We've bonded out just over 200 individuals, fellow New Orleanians.
The New Orleans Freedom Fund is an organization that bonds people out of jail with donated money.
This isn't just a civic endeavor, that some of the decisions that they make may affect people's lives.
Freedom Fund member Jennifer Schnidman says the majority of the people the fund bonds out returned for future court dates, but they refused to share that data with Fox 8. When police arrested Daquan Ayers for distribution of marijuana and the Freedom Fund bonded him out, Ayers failed to show up in court twice. Police rearrested him after officers say he beat and robbed a tourist in the French Quarter.
For more than a year, the Fox 8 defenders have investigated dangerous blighted pools across New Orleans. Since then, one pool's been drained and covered in Lakeview. A second pool drained and cleaned in Gentilly. A third pool in New Orleans East drained and filled with sand, along with a fourth pool in Venetian Isles drained and filled with sand. And the city council passed a new law that narrowly targets the most dangerous pools in New Orleans.
Documented proof a state senator may be breaking the law.
It's infuriating.
We gathered pictures, video, documents covering 122 days.
These are public funds, Lee.
Each one of those days, experts say this longtime lawmaker pocketed public money he didn't deserve.
It's fraud.
Wesley Bishop serves New Orleans East in his part-time job as state senator. His salary, $32,000 a year. Bishop works full-time at Southern University of New Orleans, or SUNO, a taxpayer-funded college. He's vice chancellor of academic affairs. His salary there, $85,000. The jobs are separate, so when Bishop fulfills his legislative duties, he must take time off from his other job at SUNO.
This is not an insignificant thing.
Our investigation found for 79 days this year, Bishop called in sick at SUNO.
That's better than a third of the year.
That's a problem because Bishop wasn't sick. We have that documented proof. All 79 days when he called in sick, he spent the day at the state capitol in his part-time job as state senator.
Fine. Then you stay home. You don't then go out to other functions and do the job. That's not what sick leave is.
Bishop's SUNO timesheets clearly show day after day he marked sick leave, meaning SUNO paid him for being ill, even though he worked and earned his additional legislative salary. Here's his timesheet for April 3rd. Bishop used 8 hours of sick leave.
You've mentioned we want to make sure we get it right the first time. What's wrong about it right now?
But here's Bishop on April 3rd in a Judiciary Committee meeting in the state capitol. April 23rd, there's Bishop on Facebook posing for a picture in Baton Rouge, even though he called in sick at SUNO. In fact, Bishop's sick time included 11 straight work weeks. All of April, all of May, Bishop doesn't appear to work one day at Suno.
If you're calling in sick, but you're not sick, it's fraud.
For these stories, we reviewed 4 years of Bishop's payroll records. All totaled, Suno may have overpaid Bishop nearly $50,000. Tracking down Bishop proved to be difficult. We emailed him repeatedly, but he'd never agree to an on-camera interview.
Hey, how are you doing? Is Senator Bishop in?
So we went to Bishop's Suno office, hoping to find the senator.
Senator Bishop's going to come in here? Yes. Okay, thank you.
After 30 minutes of waiting in the hall, an employee brought us into a conference room. A short time later, Bishop opened the door.
How do you take time off at Suno when you have to be in the legislature?
Usually I take leave.
What kind of leave?
Annual leave. And I take earned leave.
Okay, you've taken sick leave too.
I've taken earned leave and I've taken sick leave.
Sick leave. How do you justify taking sick leave for your time in the legislature?
Let me do this. I don't know what you actually have there. You spoke to me, you asked me about it. I tell you I'd be happy to respond to it. If you give me the documentation, I can actually see it. You're asking me to recall something in a 30-second soundbite over the last 7 years I've actually been there. Give me a second to see exactly what it is, what dates that you're talking about, and I can answer your question.
Okay, it's pretty, you took sick leave for the legislature. How do you justify taking sick leave?
Because, Lee, I'm going to say this one more time. It may not be the answer that you want, but it's the answer that I have for you. I like to see the documentation that you actually have.
Let's go. Let's show it to you. Fine. Okay. That's perfect.
Is that mine app?
Huh?
Is that mine app?
Here. This is yours, and here's just for a week in May, sick leave. I mean, you put in for it. Why do you need to review it?
Let me do this. I can't answer you in a 30-second soundbite.
Bishop reiterated he wanted to see the documentation we had, including his timesheets, which records show Bishop himself submitted.
Why wouldn't you schedule an on-camera interview?
Why won't you give me the question so I can answer?
We'll give you the documents. I'm happy to say, Hunter, that's not yours. I'll email the documents to you.
Lee, when you give that to me, I'll come back and meet with you. I'll be happy to meet with you.
You're going to do another on-camera interview.
Thank you.
With us.
Give me the documentation.
You will do an on-camera interview with us tomorrow.
Give me the documentation. Once I've had a chance to see the documentation, I'll respond. Thank you, Lee.
Instead, after receiving the requested documentation,
Lee, I'm not running from you. All I'm trying to figure out is that give me the documentation that you actually have.
Bishop went back on his word, refusing to answer questions about the thousands of dollars in public money he received for his unexcused absence.
Jamie Ponville has been digging in this Assumption Parish dirt pit for the past 7 years.
Normally, whenever I'd hit a tree or a piece of wood, I'd just dig straight through it.
But for 3 days last October, Ponville says he was watching online videos about Native Americans. And on the 4th day, his backhoe hit something.
My heart was about to jump out of my shirt. Here's a V-shaped pattern that I hit whenever I was digging, and that's when I stopped. And I knew I'd hit a dugout canoe.
The 16-foot-long canoe has been carbon dated at well over 1,000 years old.
We know that the tree died somewhere between 450 and 620 AD. So the canoe would date back, 13 to 1,400 years.
After the discovery, the dugout was wrapped and reburied in the pit to keep it from drying out, until it could be transported to Texas A&M's Marine Conservation Laboratory. There it will join another Louisiana artifact, this dugout from the Red River in northwest Louisiana. It's twice as long, but only half the age of the new Assumption Parish canoe. In Texas, it will take several years to replace the water with a type of dissolved plastic that will bind the wooden fibers and preserve the ancient dugout. Slowly and carefully, the soil is scraped away, exposing the canoe to the air and sunshine. The thick, moist clay that has kept the wood intact is peeled away. One of those digging is Gabriel Perot, a member of Louisiana's Chitimacha tribe, whose ancestors lived in this area.
Compared to what we used to be back in the day, we're a lot smaller as a tribe, and I don't think of it as only certain families were my ancestors. I think of all of them, as my ancestors, because there's not a lot of us, So I'm going to kind of do my best to make them happy.
1, 2, 3, slide.
After several hours of digging, the bundled piece of history is slowly lifted onto the back of a trailer for a new and unexpected journey.
Feels good. Feels good to have it up out of the ground. Hopefully it stayed intact enough to get a well-done preservation on it. I can't wait to see it once it's complete.
It's an important connection to history and family for a people who have called this area home for thousands of years.
Fox 8 Local First starts now.
I'm happy she's okay. I'm happy we're both okay.
A police officer who cannot swim didn't let that stop him from rescuing a woman stranded in floodwaters today. Good evening, I'm Kim Holden.
And I'm Lee Zurich. As heavy rain pounded the metro area, causing street flooding, some got into dangerous situations.
There were some harrowing moments at the Carrollton underpass, which saw heavy flooding. Rob Masson joins us live with more.
And Kim and Lee, things much better here at the Carrollton underpass at this hour. A true sign that the pumps do eventually work, traffic flowing smoothly in both directions, but a far different story here a couple of hours ago. Two vehicles drove right into nearly 4 feet of flood water, driving right past a heavy police presence that was here at the interchange at that time. Now, one of those vehicles was a pickup truck. Then a small Honda slipped right past New Orleans police officers trying to block the underpass. Frustrated officers shouted, put on their lights to try and get the drivers to stop, but they kept going. Shortly afterward, the Honda began floating. Then Officer Brian Frank went in for his second rescue in less than 30 minutes. As the Honda floated, he squeezed the driver out of the car window, then carried her to safety. The driver, Jeannie Higgins, says she didn't notice the officer.
It was coming and it just suddenly flooded and there was nothing I could do but stop.
And did you feel your vehicle start to float at some point?
I don't know if it was, to tell you the truth, it was floating and now I just wanted to get out.
It felt like a movie. I just jumped out my vehicle and went to a rescue. Instincts.
What'd you think when that vehicle started to float?
Yeah, when it went to, man, I just didn't want her to get to the deep parts of the water because the water was pretty deep in the middle. So I jumped out my vehicle. I immediately rushed to her aid. I tried to, I was holding on to the vehicle so the vehicle wouldn't move, but it still was moving, but I was able to grab her and pull her out. Her leg got caught into the steering wheel, but we made it out.
Are you trained for this?
No, because I do not know how to swim.
And Mrs. Higgins says she is grateful to Officer Frank for his heroic action in getting her out of her vehicle. About 30 minutes later, barricades pre-positioned at the underpass were put into place. Chief Michael Harrison says the rain came down too fast to get them in place any sooner under a plan that was adopted after last year's heavy floods. Again, things all back to normal here now at the Carrollton underpass. The last flooded cars were towed away from here about 45 minutes ago, and there's a couple people very grateful to a New Orleans police officer for getting them out of their cars in spite of the fact that they drove into the floodwaters, which are all too common here at the underpass. From Carrollton Avenue, Rob Masson, Fox 8 News.
All right, thanks so much, Rob. We spoke to Police Chief Michael Harrison on the phone earlier. He watched his officer heroically rescue the woman on Fox 8 News.
I'm watching it right now on your channel right now. It's very heroic. I'm extremely proud. And what we want to do is work to make sure our citizens are not in that kind of position.
Harrison says officers are there to keep people safe, but begged people not to drive around police cars or barricades. He asked people to stay off the streets completely if they could. He again said police officers will ticket anyone caught driving fast through floodwaters and pushing water into homes or businesses.
All right, Bayou Boogaloo is looking to reopen tomorrow after the storm delayed the event. You can see tents and merchandise all over the place. One vendor says her tent hit her in the head as she tried to hold it steady. She's okay, but it left a nasty bump. Vendors say first responders were on the scene within moments, assessing damage and ensuring no one was severely injured. They say the storm caught them totally off guard.
For about 30 minutes, my buddy Mitch and I were parasailing my tent as the wind came off the bayou and wiped out the first line of tents, which blew most of them into the second line of tents.
Organizers say they plan on opening up tomorrow early afternoon, not at 11 as scheduled. They'll announce what time in the morning.
Many people scrambled to get their vehicles out of harm's way when it started raining.
Well, the water just kept getting deeper and the traffic was stopped. And it wasn't so bad if I could move, but when it stops, that scares me because I keep thinking, okay, you know, it's just going to keep raining. So maybe I saw this little piece of land. I thought I should get up on it.
The city lifted restrictions on parking on the neutral ground. The mayor and police chiefs both said no vehicles would be ticketed while seeking higher ground. One business in the area, Orleans Sheet Metal Works, reported taking on water because of people driving through the flooded streets, pushing water into the shop.
Business owners in the Treme area battled to try to keep water out. Some were successful, others not. Sabrina Wilson has more.
As traffic snaked its way down North Claiborne Avenue, an NOPD vehicle blocked Basin Street, which is covered by lots of water. Of course, you can see there is a Corvette off to the side, a truck, and a vehicle with its lights on, not moving, obviously not knowing how deep the water is. If we pan over to the neutral ground, you see some vehicles parked there, taking refuge from the flood waters that have inundated streets in this area. As you can see, there's a man next to Ray's on the avenue trying to clean out a catch basin. He's got his pants rolled up. Obviously, a lot of water on the street here on Basin near North Claiborne. What were you doing there?
Well, just trying to keep the water flowing. The pumps are working, so just trying to keep it clear and moving.
Is this your establishment?
Yes, yes, it is.
Did you get any water inside?
About 6 inches inside. Yeah, so, you know, hey, it is what it is. It's New Orleans, so we got to do what we do.
Of course, the police chief, city officials were asking people if they were going to drive carefully and slowly, as the waters from the heavy rains we got in a short period of time covered a lot of streets. NOPD vehicles blocking a number of the flooded streets, so that means people cannot drive. The word to everyone during this event was to stay indoors and be as careful as possible. That's the situation here on Basin Street at North Claiborne. I'm Sabrina Wilson, Fox 8 News. Back to you.
All right, our Fox 8 storm tracker was out in the storms, giving you live looks at the flooding and damage. There were reports of downed power poles and snapped tree branches, but we haven't heard of any injuries.
Manhole covers started shooting out water as the rain fell fast and furious. These pictures are from the CBD. You can see water bubbling up out of the covers as the heavy rains swamped the system. The interim executive director of the Sewerage and Water Board says in the areas where we saw flooding, the pumps were operating and held their own. She credits significant improvements since the August 5th flood.
In the August 5th floods, we had 23 megawatts of power. Today, we had 71 megawatts available. We had the majority of our pumps available. We've installed remote capability to increase our situational awareness so that we are able to see from a single computer station the status of all of our pumps.
Marcy Edwards says the system still needs to be renovated and expanded and needs a lot of additional investment. Her last day on the job is Tuesday.
Jefferson Parish didn't escape the street flooding either. At LeBar and Metairie Road, right near Cafe B, drivers drove slowly through the flooded streets for the most part. Parish President Mike Yenny said several roads had to be closed. Some areas got more than 6 inches of rain in under an hour. As the water drained, canals filled up. This is the canal on Veterans near Cleary. Yenny says 183 of the parish's 184 pumps were working. So is the severe weather over for the weekend, or can we expect a repeat for tomorrow?
Let's hope not. Chief Meteorologist David Bernard joins us now with your Weather Authority forecast.
Here's something we'd like to see, and after days and days and weeks of no rain, we got it all in a couple of hours. Well, tonight, Viper is quiet, but if we go back and look at our rainfall totals, boom, from River Ridge to Clearview and I-10, all the way back into the city, into upper portions of St. Bernard Parish. This was widespread 3-inch rains, and within there, we had some 4- and 5-inch bullseyes that showed up. Here in parts of Metro New Orleans, some of the heaviest rain was in the Treme and French Quarter. Radar estimating around 4.5 inches. Likely a couple of spots that had a little bit more than that, but based on all our weather observers that we have, it does appear 3 to 5 inches was on average the amount. Again, it was the amount of time it fell in, basically an hour to an hour and a half, and the pumps cannot keep up with that kind of rain. Tomorrow, some drier air coming in and only a 20% chance of a storm, 89 by noon, so the heat is likely going to be back. Remember, yesterday at this time, our Fox 8 forecast model showed the storms developing over us in the afternoon. Now, they concentrated right over the city, and our lake breezes collided with those storms to accelerate the amount of rain that fell. But tomorrow, we're just not showing that much out there at all, and so it looks like it's going to be mostly dry. Out there right now, 68 in Hammond, 71 in Belle Chase. Gonzales has a 69, so we do have some rain-cooled air. It's possible there might be some patchy fog that develops by tomorrow morning. We have a 4-mile visibility with some low clouds in Gonzales, just something to look out for if you're going to be up early. More details on what to expect for Sunday, and we're going to be watching some tropical moisture next week. I'll have that coming up with your Weather Authority forecast.
See you in a few, David. You can always get the latest on severe weather threats on fox8live.com, and when you're on the go, download our Fox 8 weather app to get updates on any warnings and watches. The teen accused in a mass shooting at a Texas school today went before a judge tonight.
Omar Jimenez has more on the investigation into the shooting from Santa Fe, Texas.
You have the right to retain counsel. You have the right to remain silent.
Santa Fe high school shooting suspect Demetrios Pagorchis appearing before Galveston County Judge Mark Henry Friday night, charged with capital murder and aggravated assault on a public servant.
Are you requesting consideration for a court-appointed attorney?
Yes, sir. He's accused of killing 9 students and 1 teacher and injuring 10 others in an attack that started in an art class at Santa Fe High School.
Still have several more shots from him. He's actually shooting. He's in the art room. We got shots fired right now, guys. We need all of you.
Witnesses described running from the school when they heard gunshots.
A teacher was telling us to go, 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 and then, it's like instinct. You're scared, you're traumatized, so you're running as fast as you can.
One student remembers seeing the shooter in the hallway and hearing gunshots in the classroom next door.
We started barricading the doors and telling everyone just to calm down, be quiet, be quiet. Everyone was just crying in complete tears.
Officials say explosive devices were found at the school and in surrounding areas.
One was a CO2 device. Another was a Molotov cocktail. And there are various other types of explosive devices.
For now, the shooter will be held in solitary confinement at the Galveston County Jail.
Until such time as he has his case heard or a trial judge determines that he's eligible for bond, he's not going anywhere.
In Santa Fe, Texas, I'm Omar Jimenez.
After the shooting, the governor of Texas said safety measures need to be taken.
We need to do more than just pray for the victims and their families. It's time in Texas that we take action to step up and make sure this tragedy is never repeated ever again in the history of the state of Texas.
Many are calling for gun control measures similar to the calls after the mass shooting at a Florida high school in February. Some students from Santa Fe High School participated in recent class walkouts designed to convince lawmakers to reform gun laws. They held a sign with #NeverAgain written on it. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School students in Florida brought attention to the hashtag after a mass shooting killed 17 people at their school.
One fallout from school shootings is the impact on children. Amanda Roberts explains how parents are encouraged not to shy away from talking with their kids and answering tough questions.
Despite the prevalence of school shootings across the country, it's important to stay sensitive to the topic when talking with your children.
In the aftermath of a shooting like this, we also want to be mindful that kids are having reactions to all of the information that they're getting, and they may not have a full understanding of what they're hearing.
Michelle Maney, an LSU health clinical social worker, says communication is key.
Be willing to talk to your child about uncomfortable topics. Be aware of changes in their behavior and express that you care about them and that you're concerned.
Not only so your child better understands what's happening in the world, but also to clue parents into any potential warning signs.
Anytime you see a child withdrawing from their normal social activities, grades dropping, becoming angry or irritable, not communicating as well, these are always points of concern.
Because she says, unfortunately, these events can trigger children on the cusp who need someone to reach out.
Certainly kids can see that this person is gaining notoriety and may feel like if they are not feeling very effective in their life or very effective in their social interactions, they may feel like, well, this will get me noticed, this will make me famous, this will make everybody notice me and pay attention to me in a way they cannot seem to get that done in their normal social interactions.
Amanda Roberts, Fox 8 News.
Many say it's also good practice in those kinds of conversations with your children to emphasize the survivors over the suspect.
Today, Jefferson Parish deputies arrested a 17-year-old student accused of bringing a stolen gun to a school. The sheriff's office says a coach at East Jefferson High School found Leroy Freelou inside a gym where he didn't belong. When he was questioned about possibly having illegal contraband, Freelou told a school administrator he hid something inside. The administrator followed him outside and saw Freelou get a gun out of a trash can. He ran from the building but was arrested by a JPSO deputy. Some juveniles who commit serious crimes are transferred to the adult court for prosecution.
I understand when we bring a juvenile up to the adult court, that's a life-changing move for that individual.
In an all-new Crime Tracker investigation, we look at the amount of juveniles being transferred to the adult court and the crimes they're accused of committing. Watch Young Guns Monday night on Fox 8 News at 10.
Breaking news out of the state capitol tonight. Governor Edwards has vetoed a budget bill. The $28 billion budget would have slashed funding for education, social services, and public safety. The governor says some of the services would not be able to operate on the money suggested. He has called a special session to start next week, where he wants lawmakers to come up with a new spending plan that includes renewing some expiring taxes. A bill to extend Harrah's Casino's operating contract dies in the final hours of the spring session. Earlier this week, House lawmakers rejected the Senate's amendments to the bill and sent the measure to a conference committee made up of both House and Senate members. Harrah's current contract with Louisiana doesn't expire for 6 more years, but the casino wanted to renew it now in exchange for promising to invest $350 million into the casino and the property around it. A Fox 8 investigation looked into possible conflicts of interest with some of those involved in the deal making. Look for that on fox8live.com.
There's a place right near the edge of the 9th Ward in Bywater that's a treasure trove for people remodeling their homes. But more and more artists are digging through the recycled building material. Rob Krieger has the special report, Salvaged Art.
I like to aim to please. At the Green Project, everything is a work in progress. Just like the city that feeds the warehouse of donated building materials, the hodgepodge of doors and fixtures, some old, some bold, is as eclectic as New Orleans itself. In fact, this place is New Orleans. Literally, the framework of the city stuffed in an old buried chest of a building in the upper 9th Ward. An X marks the spot. A treasure hunt. Jordan Batiste, the store manager at the Green Project, knows the real secret. It's all about the hunt.
Customers would tell me that one of the things they value most about the Green Project is digging for their materials.
It came bright yellow, and I was like, I need this.
Some are usually working on their house, but Batiste says nearly half are looking for that perfect canvas. Or like in Crystal Obazinski's case, that perfect door.
I love wood so much better than canvas.
She's one of several artists using pieces of old homes, some weathered by time, others salvaged from Mother Nature herself, to tell a story that's truly New Orleans.
You look at these doors, this city, we just turned 300. Some of these doors are 60, 100 years old. You know, I don't know what happened before then. And so each one's different, and each one tells a different story, so you get it. And then you're adding to its story instead of starting from scratch.
Most artists will frame their work afterwards. I start with the frame first.
That's Wayne Mans, an artist truly unique in his ilk.
Kind of make this look like the river boats.
He finds pieces that speak to him.
And then inside, there's just a kind of a group of folks enjoying music.
And like a good gumbo, marries them together, spinning a yarn, usually made from wood.
I try to tell stories with my pictures. And the stories are about black folk who are just extraordinary people who go about their living and go about their life.
Almost always framing those stories inside pieces of history, homes, instruments, and furniture he's found.
Narrating a story without using words. It's using images and symbols and things I rescue from, whether it's the Green Project or somewhere in Europe.
Those stories come to life in his work, not just from the imagery, but the real connection to the past that binds art with the fabric of New Orleans.
If you're talking about, let's say, a doorknob, how many times did someone's hand open a door?
You see the knocker? It came like that, with like whose house needed that big, loud knocker?
I see them take something that's not in the best condition, that looks run down, tore down, and they transform it into this beautiful piece of work, this new life.
A new life that starts at the Green Project, the only place that recycles paint in the South, creating vibrant colors once meant for the facades of decades-old homes, primed for the artist's palette.
Because I paint on doors, so why not use like house paint? It's more affordable, and they have such a variety of colors.
But even outside the paint, Mans believes this work is truly important to the story of New Orleans. It's why he searches for those pieces that capture the heart of the city and its people, especially during its most trying moments.
The properties that they were protecting and they were living in, and they were guarding, some of them, because they didn't leave, let's say, were ravaged by the storm and the winds and even storms that predated Katrina. So finding that stuff and then giving it another life is very important to me.
A message that is quintessentially New Orleans, if not only for the imagery, but for the canvas itself. It just takes a little searching, maybe a good guide, and some instinct to sniff out that perfect piece rooted in the past.
Often I feel like an archaeologist rather than a painter. And I go about hunting for things, looking for things to unearth or find and rescue and bring back to life and give a new life to.
Rob Krieger, Fox 8 News.
Mans has art featured in homes and museums around the world. Obozinski was recently named Best in Show during the second week of Jazz Fest.
So talented.
Very talented. Yeah. All right, LSU baseball looked like a completely different team tonight in a must-win game.
We'll have the latest from their matchup with Auburn coming up.
And we may begin to dry out some, but tropical moisture's on the increase next week. We'll talk about those rain chances right after this.
Now, your Weather Authority forecast from David Bernard.
Well, all signs are pointing to a much drier day tomorrow. We thought there'd be a few storms today. You can't ever tell when there's going to be a big collision right over the lake, and that's what happened and got us today. But with that drier air tomorrow, should limit that chance to about 20%. 91 at 2 o'clock. So we're going to have some pretty hot weather again tomorrow because we're not going to have the same amount of storms. Look at our Fox 8 forecast model. There's one or two out there. So sparse coverage as we go into Sunday. Maybe a few more on Sunday. Will increase it to 30% as the Gulf moisture starts to build in. Look at this. Bywater 4.45 from Steve. Mike and Cleary Playground 4.35. Mid-City here at Fox 8 3.51. Algiers Ron over 4. And Betty and Metairie had just under 2. And we had winds gusting to 45 at both airports today, including some 50-mile-per-hour winds at Bayou Boogaloo that caused all of that damage. 92 for the high temperature today. Didn't make the record. That's the bright side, I guess, because of all the storms out there. And while tomorrow could flirt with record heat, we're probably going to trend closer to normal next week because we're going to see an increase in moisture. The deepest tropical moisture, despite what we had today, has still been well to the south and east. But as we go into Monday, it's going to increase across all of the Gulf Coast, bringing back our daily summer storm chance that we've been lacking for the last few weeks. And as we go deeper into next week, even deeper tropical moisture is going to come in from the Caribbean and southern Gulf of Mexico, and that should ensure the daily chance of showers and storms. 20% tomorrow, 30% Sunday, and a 40% chance Monday through Friday. Kind of hard to distinguish one day from the next. As we get into next week was a sure sign that we're heading into summer. So there you have it. We'll go from extra hot tomorrow to upper 80s next week with a mix of sun and storms each day. And low temperatures are mostly going to be in the 70s. Your Delta World Tire weather phone is at 500-2888. Chris Hagan up next with sports.
We have breaking news from Crown Point, where Jefferson Parish deputies are on the scene of a double shooting. It happened in the 7800 block of Barataria Boulevard. We've got a crew on the way, and we'll bring you more information as soon as we get it on our news app and our website.
Fox 8 Sports is sponsored by Nissan. Innovation that excites.
Auburn and LSU somewhat mirror each other. Both entered the night at 14-14 in the conference, and neither one very good on the road. Just 10 wins between the two of them away from home. The only problem, it's LSU playing on the road against one of the best pitchers in the country. And through 4 innings, Casey Mize lived up to the name, registered 9 Ks, even striking out the side in the 4th, and looked just about untouchable. But so did Mikhail Hilliard, the LSU freshman, holding his own through the first 4 frames as well and keeping the Tigers in this game. Bottom of the 5th is where the scoring starts. Josh Anthony sends a chopper over the infield. 2 runs come across for Auburn as they take the lead, but LSU does respond after an Antoine Duplantis single. Austin Bain drives one to left. The outfielder charging and diving but can't make the play. Duplantis able to hustle in with the tying run from second. Then it's the hottest hitter of them all right now, Daniel Cabrera, with a double to give LSU the lead. They score 4 in the inning and go on to win it by a final score of 6-2. They'll try to win their first road series of the year in Game 3 tomorrow at 1. Meanwhile, Tulane played a doubleheader today at UCF and lost both each by 1 run. They'll try to salvage the series tomorrow. Southeastern rallies in the 8th to score 4 runs and beat Houston 5-4. UNO and Northwestern State get postponed after this evening's downpour, and Nicholls State picks up a much-needed win at home over UCA.
All righty, that is the news. Thanks for watching.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
With the Fox 8 mobile app, you'll never be without Fox 8 News. Sign up at fox8live.com for text and email alerts during breaking news and weather. Sponsored by the Fox 8 Storm Tracker, powered by Nissan.